Hello there guys, it's Joey and this is a new trio of votives, so a votive set, there's two of them, and this is Sorceresses of Avalon, especially for Yule, although I love them so much. They may end up being regular, probably not permanent but regular, maybe creating a few different bits and pieces around the energies of these three. So we have Morgana LeFay, Moregos and Nimoy. And within the Arthurian myth there is arguably Celtic origin, and there is more than one major Arthurian myth source material, and the role played by the women differs in each. In one, Morgana LeFay is the trickster, is more malicious, and in the other she's a healer. And it's my personal feeling that the power of these three was a little bit demonized in the Arthurian myth, and I wanted to sort of peel back that layer and take them back to being proud, beautiful sorceresses. So first up we have Morgana LeFay, and I'm going to move these out so we can zoom in, but I really wanted you to see how the three work together in shades of purple. So purple is the colour of magic and spirit and transformation, and so therefore it made sense to have them embody the energies of sorceresses, of magic, in different shades of this colour magic. And the colour magic and then the glitter and the floral choice revolved around each of the sorceresses. So let's zoom in a bit for Morgana LeFay. So Morgana LeFay is a very dark, deep plum purple. I hope it picks up on the camera. It's difficult to tell. It looks a little bit black to my eye through this lens, but usually it's not so bad once the editing process has gone through. But it is a deep, dark plum. And Morgana LeFay is a mistress of magic, the deep mysteries, spiritual guidance, psychic ability, and personal spiritual power. She's perhaps the most famous of the sorceresses. Some believe that her mythos is attached to the Celtic goddess, my mama, Moregos' work and lore, and that actually the 9 ladies of Avalon, the 9 Morgans, are actually 9 faces of the goddess Morrigan, and that myth has just been lost, and the Christianization of that myth is all that remains. Some people would disagree, but regardless, I think that Morgana LeFay is a wonderful example of having to reevaluate what we've been told in myth and go beyond it, go beyond the negative stereotype of a female in her power, looking beyond that as a sorceress, as a mistress of magic, and enabling ourselves to embrace our own magical potential and spiritual guidance and psychic ability, and not be apologetic for who we are as magical practitioners, whilst keeping in mind responsibilities and duties. And depending on the story, Morgana LeFay remembers her responsibilities and duties. Even in the end of her negative story, she's there ferrying Arthur to the land of Avalon upon his death, and that sort of hints at that kind of responsibility and duty. You get one of each with the set, by the way. So then we have Moregos, Moregos is the seductress, basically, and depending on the myth, it seems that her and Morgan Le Fay's stories kind of get used interchangeably, depending on where you read it. She is the mother of Mordred, not Morgana Le Fay, and there is the story of her marrying Lot, and basically she's very regal, very sovereign, seeking out power, and she's presented in a negative light because of this. Now the arts of seduction, sexual power, lust, femininity, one's wild and wiles, wild self and wiles, as well as intellect, perception and guile are the energies woven into the Morgos spell votive. And in the mythos, seeking out one's destiny, seeking out the personal power, seeking out one's position is presented in a very negative light. Even within the Mist story, Morgos is presented quite negatively, and I don't think there's a fair treatment at all of these incredible sorceresses. And today we think of women seeking out independence and using every tool in their box, and there's a whole value judgment still on sensuality, sexuality and lust magic, and that has been on my mind a lot lately, the double standards and the judgment of sensuality, sexuality and lust magic. And I've talked about it at length quite a bit, so I'm not going to go too overboard here, but to honour one's sensuality, to honour that part of oneself is just a natural part of magic, and magic is the ecstasy and the power of oneself and the enamorment and the bewitchment of the senses. And I think it's important to honour that element of oneself, and in keeping with the Sorceresses of Avalon. I really love these. One of these might not go on store, one of these might be for me. So there may not be two on the store. And then finally we have Nimoy. Depending again on the myth, sometimes she's interchangeable with the Lady of the Lake, sometimes she is the Lady of the Lake, and then depending on which story you're looking at, sometimes the Lady of the Lake is given as a separate entity. But again, Nimoy in some of the myths is an apprentice to Merlin who betrays him, and depending on the myth, the lover of Merlin and the great love of Merlin, and some versions of the story she is tricked by someone else, and it's either you're a love interest, you're innocent and you get tricked, or you want power of your own and you're negative unfortunately within the Sorceresses stories. And I think we need to go beyond that. And even within the Lady of the Lake imagery, she gives the answers. She is knowledgeable and wise of her own right, and therefore the energies contained within the Nimoy spell votive, sorry, getting ahead of myself. I'm thinking of doing spell orbs for them. Is a rebirth, the answers, the magical answers, solutions, mirrors and reflections. And I think that's a really key part of Nimoy, is the ability to reflect, and it's to show you what's within yourself and show you your own ability, show you your own power, but show your own failings as well. And it is the realm of emotions here, and conquering unsurmountable odds, so a sort of victory element to the Nimoy magic. Very rooted in water, no matter which version of Nimoy you really associate with or think is a little bit better, or perhaps you think that it's all reflections of the same thing and there's truth to some of it. in all of it, and I think that's probably the best way to look at it. So we'll zoom out again, and I'll just pop these so you can see them again as a trio, which is how I'm going to be selling them. Yeah, I really, really adore these. All the colour, by the way, is it nearly always, well, it always is, but it's hand blended, so that and these colours were particularly arduous, like the very careful creation of each colour so that they work together as a trio of sorceresses, but they stand alone as well, and so they have their own power, but they come together as the Sorceresses of Avalon, and I really love these. So these will be available on store soon. Many blessings.